You know that sound. That specific sound a man makes when he gets up off the sofa. Not a word, not quite a grunt, something in between, a sort of involuntary announcement that standing up now requires the same level of commitment as a minor surgical procedure. One man makes that sound at 50, the other one doesn't. And the question worth asking is, what actually happened to each of them? Right, two men, both 50, same age, more or less same generation, probably grew up watching the same rubbish television and eating the same beige school dinners. But at 50, they are living in completely different bodies. One of them, let's call him James, moves well, still picks things up off the floor without announcing it, carries shopping in from the car in one trip, just because he can, goes up the stairs at a normal pace, not the negotiating a treaty pace that involves the handrail and a small rest at the top. He has energy in the afternoons. He is not some elite athlete. He is just capable, functioning, like a car that has been reasonably looked after. The other one, David, is not a disaster. He is not bedridden. He is not in crisis. He is just uncomfortable. A bit stiff in the mornings, takes a minute or two to get the legs working. A bit heavier than he would like, carrying it mostly round the middle, where it showed up gradually and then all at once. Gets a bit short of breath on stairs he used to take without thinking. Describes a lot of this as just age. And honestly, a lot of people around him nod along and say, yeah, me too. That is just what happens. And that last part is the bit that worries me. Because here is the thing. This did not happen overnight. Neither man woke up on their 50th birthday and suddenly found themselves in their current shape. What happened was much slower and much less dramatic than that, which is partly why it is so easy to miss. Decline, when it comes, does not arrive in one big moment. It creeps. It arrives in the form of a year where you barely moved because work was busy, a period where sleep was poor and stress was high, and the last thing on earth you felt like doing was going for a walk. A run of months where the gym bag sat in the car boot, still in its packaging, genuinely still in the packaging, and every Monday you thought, right, this week. A period where comfort became the default, and then comfort became normal, and then normal started to quietly lower the bar on what you expected of yourself. The weight does not arrive all at once. It is £1 here, £2 there, the kind of change that is invisible in the mirror on any given Tuesday, but shows up years later when you are trying on a jacket you used to wear and find yourself thinking, have these shoulders always been this close together? The strength disappears the same way, not dramatically, just quietly stops being maintained. You stop carrying things, stop climbing things, stop doing the physical tasks that used to be automatic. And the body, which is extraordinarily good at conserving energy, goes, right, fine, apparently we're not doing that anymore. And it adjusts accordingly. It is not vindictive, it is just practical. The stiffness starts small, a tight back one morning, an aching knee after a longer walk, and instead of thinking, that is information, maybe I need to move more, a lot of men file it under age and reach for the ibuprofen, which is understandable, but which, over time, becomes a sort of permission slip to stop expecting the body to work well. I should say at this point, who am I and why am I sitting here talking about this? Fair question. I am John. I am in my mid-40s. I have a decent job, a mortgage that has strong opinions about my life choices, and 2 young boys who I'm trying to raise to be reasonable human beings. I'm not a personal trainer. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not someone who has their life immaculately together. I still eat biscuits over the sink. I still have weeks where the best physical activity I managed was walking to the car. But I have had enough years now to see what happens to men who drift. I've seen the difference between the men who kept doing something and the men who kept meaning to start. And I do these videos because I genuinely want men, particularly younger men, to see this earlier than I did. Because from where I am standing, the view back is very clear and slightly alarming. So, James and David, let's stay with them. The important thing to understand, and I want to be really clear here, is that James is not some remarkable specimen. He did not run marathons in his 30s. He was not a personal trainer in a previous life. He is not one of those people who genuinely enjoys a 5 a.m. cold shower and considers it a treat. He is just a bloke who kept doing something, kept walking, kept doing a bit of lifting. Nothing heroic, just enough to remind his body that it was still expected to be useful. Kept his weight roughly in check, not through obsessive tracking, but through not completely abandoning the relationship between what he ate and how he moved. He protected basic strength. He protected mobility. Not because he had a spreadsheet and a plan, but because he just never fully stopped. David, on the other hand, did not ruin his health in one dramatic decision. There was no catastrophic moment, no single bad year that explains everything. He just slowly stopped asking much of himself. A bit less each year, a slightly shorter walk, a slightly longer sit, a few more evenings on the sofa instead of doing anything active, a few more weeks of, I'll get back to it. And each individual step was so small as to be almost invisible, but the steps added up. They always do. And here is what I think people miss. It is not that David was lazy and James was disciplined in some fundamental character sense. It is more that James never let the baseline drop. He stayed in the habit of movement in the same way most people stay in the habit of, cleaning their teeth. Not because it was exciting, just because he kept doing it. David let the baseline slowly slide. And once it slides far enough, getting back feels so big that it is easier not to try. Not because he was weak, just because the gap between where he was and where he thought he needed to be started to feel insurmountable. Which it is not, but that is how it feels. Now, why is David becoming the normal one? That is the part that really gets me. Modern life is, if you think about it, almost perfectly engineered to produce a David. We sit for work, we sit in the car, we sit in the evening in front of a screen. The food that is easiest to access and cheapest and quickest is almost always the food that requires the least effort and does the most damage over time. We are tired, genuinely tired, not making excuses tired, because work is demanding and life is busy. And by 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night, the idea of doing anything other than collapsing onto the sofa with a cup of tea and whatever is on television feels like an act of violence against yourself. And so low movement has become normal. Carrying a bit of extra weight has become normal. Being stiff in the mornings, getting a bit breathless on a moderate hill, describing a set of stairs as a workout. This has all become normal. And the people around David also feel this way, so nobody questions it. Everybody nods. Just age, mate. Tell me about it. But here is the thing. Common and normal are not the same as good. And they are certainly not the same as inevitable. There is a version of 50 that is significantly more capable than many men are currently settling for. And the distance between those two versions is not genetics or luck. It is mostly just daily movement done consistently over a long time. That is it. That is most of it. If this kind of thing is useful to you, do subscribe. It is always good to know these conversations are landing somewhere. And if you know a James or a David, or you are somewhere in between like most of us, leave a comment below. I would genuinely like to know. So what does actually helping yourself look like? Because I do not want this to turn into a lecture where I point at David and say, tisk tisk, and then send everyone off feeling vaguely guilty. That is not useful to anyone. The honest answer is boring, which is why people resist it. It is not a program. It is not a transformation plan. It is just move more, walk more, further and more often than you currently do. Get off the sofa and do something physical every day. Even if that something is 20 minutes. Do some strength work. Not because you want to look like someone on the cover of a magazine, but because muscle protects you. It protects your joints. It makes ordinary life easier. Carrying things, getting up and down, climbing stairs, picking your children up, all of it. Muscle is what makes you capable. You do not have to join a gym. You do not have to track macros or buy expensive kit. You just have to stop treating your body like a thing that carries your head to meetings and start treating it like something worth maintaining. The thing about 10 to 30 minutes a day, done consistently, is that it absolutely does not look impressive. But over months and years, it is the difference between James and David. It is not the heroic burst, the 6-week January program, the extreme diet, the sudden decision to run a half marathon that makes the difference. It is the unremarkable, undramatic, slightly dull habit of just doing something every day, even when it is cold and you do not want to. Especially then. The goal is not perfection. The goal is not abs. The goal is capability. Being able to move through life without it being a negotiation, being harder to break. The thing I think about most, honestly, is my boys. I do not want them growing up in a house where moving is a special event, where dad groans when he stands up, where the default position is horizontal. I want them to see movement as just part of it, part of what you do. I want them to grow up thinking that going for a walk, doing some exercise, taking the stairs, these are just normal things, not aspirational ones. And more than that, I want them to be capable men when they are older. I want them to be able to carry their own shopping when they are 70, play with their own grandchildren, climb a hill and enjoy it, live independently, without the daily indignity of a body that has been so thoroughly ignored for so long that it has stopped cooperating. Looking after the body is not vanity. It is basic life maintenance. It is the same thinking as putting oil in the car, or getting the boiler serviced, or fixing the leak before the ceiling comes down. You do not do it because you want a trophy. You do it because ignoring it has consequences, and those consequences show up later, and they are not fun. I want my boys to understand this early enough that it is not a dramatic lifestyle overhaul at 45. It is just how they live. That is the version of this I am rooting for them. Which brings me back to James and David, standing at 50, living in the results of thousands of ordinary days. Not big dramatic decisions, thousands of small ones. The walk they took or did not take. The week they kept the habit going or quietly let it slip. The year they gradually moved less and told themselves it was fine. Or the year they kept the baseline, even imperfectly, even inconsistently, because they understood, on some level, that the body needs to be asked to work, or it gradually stops being able to. James and David are not just two men with different bodies. They are two men living the compounded result of the daily choices that seemed, at the time, entirely insignificant. And here is the good news. Genuinely, the good news is that whichever one of those men you feel closer to right now, wherever the baseline has drifted to, you can still change direction. Not all the way back, not overnight, but meaningfully, consistently, in the direction of capable rather than comfortable. It is just a question of what you ask of yourself tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. That is the whole thing, really.